Welcome viewers. Once again, we bring to you a professional discussion purely based on a very senior professional expert in the field, and the kind of thought process he has is going to be immensely useful for security professionals. Those who are in the field of managing the risk, managing security, and those who handle the responsibility of securing the critical infrastructure for them, this is very, very essential to have critical thinking. And as such, theme for the discussion today is critical thinking, the X factor for security, criminology, and risk professionals. We as security professionals, we know how sometimes not getting the information or not getting the right information is going to be very, very devastating. Today, critical thinking is most critical thing, and that is a very poor cliche I use here, because in security profession we know how important it is to have information timely, and that information must also be accurate and authenticated. This information will make the organization, also break the organization, because right decision is based on right information. And to discuss this subject, critical thinking, the X factor for security, criminology, and risk professional, we have with us Mr. Juan, who is Director General of International Security Industry Organization since 2002. Welcome, Juan. Let us also know that he is author of Human Investigation Management, which is focused on standardization and capacity building. He is also author of Peer Reviewed Manuscripts, booklets, and guidance articles based upon critical thinking, the X factor for security, criminology, and risk. This presently is running in volume 3, which are 6 studies interwoven into one manuscript. Very rarely one comes across a book which is living research in which every facets of professional values get added to give cutting edge to security professionals, which they missed so far. So, on behalf of International Council for Industrial Security and Safety Management and our viewers, I welcome you for this discussion, Juan. And I want to know, what is X factor? What is criticality, and how one can have critical thinking, both for security professional and for bringing this critical thinking into our profession. Your time, please.
Thank you for the introduction. Professor. I appreciate that. Before I go into answer your question, I'd like to address a specific threat. Hello, yes, I am going to answer the question on what is critical thinking. But what I'd like to do just before I begin, because this is a very important discussion, and we actually have an existing threat. So as the X factor is that we can lose internet connection. Perhaps somebody doesn't enjoy the conversation or gets bored and they want to switch off, or they've got something else to do and they don't enjoy my accent. That's possible. They might leave. So before anything happens, I'd like to put over a specific message to all practitioners, because it's a very important message. 6 days ago, the country of Portugal assessed and made it a research on monkeypox. And they've discovered that it has become a new variant, and that is why the infection rate around in the UK and in the USA, the rates have escalated. Now there is a reason why it is classed as a global threat, and this is very important because all practitioners that are pregnant or they have pregnancy in their lives, in other words, they could be married to somebody or having a pregnant person near them, they have to be very careful. They mustn't be on the front lines of security of certain sites in certain countries and in certain cities, because the risk rate is very high. Now, it not might have a high mortality rate as COVID did, or HIV/AIDS, but the thing is that when the fetus, when a person is pregnant, the fetus is at risk, and people, it can create blindness and it can create other issues. So there is real cause of concern, a real reason to be concerned. So what we have discovered as well is that it's now becoming a high infection of children that is going to school. So 37% of the children of the infected people are children, and that's high risk. So if there is a officer that's protecting a school in a certain country or a certain location, then be concerned and don't place those security officers on the front line. It's very important to consider this message. And all the protocols are on the HRM tool, so they're for free, and please download them and try and consider going through that information. So, Professor, I needed to put that message out just in case people wanted to just leave, but I think it's a very important message to put over. I hope you agree with that. Okay.
Please.
Okay, sorry about that. But to answer your question, the X factor is our biggest nightmare in security is not knowing what's truly happening under our own nose, what's truly going on. And it all began at an airport, a particular airline. And when I was flying with that particular airline, I saw some security interviewing taking place. And because of my past history, I noticed that when they were interviewing different cultures, those cultures could react differently. So if people were trained in a certain way, they actually wouldn't be able to, they could misinterpret the other person that they were actually interviewing, because cultures can even speak to each other without even using words. They can just use hand language, because in their culture, it's part of the language. Because that I discovered was the X factor. So regardless of the culture, the security operator or officer on the ground has to know exactly what they're truly looking at. Now, at this airport, throughout the world, people are flying, either terrorists or immigrants and migrants, illegals that are flying to countries, or as we've just gone through the experience now with the biological threat, where the biological threat now is being transmitted worldwide within days, simply because of the people are being able to travel. We're in a global village. So what is ever happening in one part of the world can immediately happen and take place in other countries. So the research began from there. That's where it was originally conceived. So it was the thinking methodology, the thinking method of actually understanding what we're actually looking at. Many other faculties have been able to, or have tried to define critical thinking and prove it. But in the security industry, we can define it. We uncover loopholes, damning issues, and opportunities, which are the methods to litigate or lower the level of collateral damage with regards to a biological threat or any other issue that's taking place. So we can actually define it. And the way we prove it is in actual crime and criminal networks being broken, and corruption broken, or all different issues, or even with regards to research. Researchers in academia, it's basically investigation. So we do investigation, we do extreme investigation. And what we're looking for are the things that we don't know, because there are millions of criminals every day trying to outthink and outsmart the security system. That's the people and the manpower. So there's new crime evolving all the time, and copycat crime evolving. So this is what our job is. Our job is to find the crime and stop it, or protect sites and save lives. So it's very important for us to be aware of what, we aren't, crime investigators are only summoned after an incident occurs. We actually got to find the crime before it begins, or we have to do something very quickly, because otherwise it could turn into a major issue. And this is what we're actually looking for. And this is the X factor that we've got to actually find. Over to you, Professor.
Yes. So far, I understood that as professional, we must have critical thinking. And through this process of critical thinking, we will get to know the X factor, the information which we are missing out. So
Correct.
through the
Yes.
critical thinking, we get to know the X factor. But this X factor, the information which will keep on piling up with the security team leader or the top management, to get through the whole lot of information and actually retaining the useful information is a big process. So how you suggest that when information start streaming in, which is the right information which is to be shared upward and downward, how to make that qualitative decision?
That's an excellent question. From the research produced two things. The first one was the formula, or the research philosophy and methodology for critical thinking, for security, criminology, risk. The second thing that the research gave us was the principle for security. Security success depends on the level of situational awareness of the people on the ground and their reaction speed. And that fundamental principle is basically the key. Situational awareness is so broad-based, but we actually have to truly understand what situational awareness is. In one of my booklets, I actually work on that's an octopus. The octopus is an amazing creature. It is so intelligent. It's fantastic. And we actually have to look at something, and we have to be situationally aware of all the moving parts in order to actually understand what we're looking at. So you actually need the knowledge to understand intelligence. So you have to be intelligent enough to know that you need the knowledge in order to understand the intelligence. And this is what we do, is that we actually be able to understand exactly what you're looking at, understanding the landscape, and actually being able to make decisions. So it's the decision makers on the ground that have to understand what they're looking at, and then obviously we go into the reaction speed. So it's a simple principle, but this is the formula that we actually utilize. And from this simple and these basic formulas, we've actually managed to even create even more powerful tools in order to limit the level of collateral damage. We need to gather reliable and usable information. And that's from the people on the ground. The biggest problem, and this is where we got the experimental tool, is that if it's to teach critical thinking and to think in critical thinking way, security practitioners must realize that it's not a question of what knowledge they have, it's also the skill sets that they have. So they can have as many degrees as they want, or diplomas, but at the end of the day, it's the skill sets that make people relevant. So how we actually, because we have to train our brain to think in a specific way. So there's a particular tool that we utilize as the experimental tool to prove this. If anybody at this panel now is listening and in security, you can't be naive to think that people, they lie, and they do hide information, and they do volunteer information for their own agenda. If we in security, we're there to investigate, we're there to ask questions, to see if somebody's up to something, to think in a specific way. And by thinking in an investigative way, you're actually training your brain to think at the whole picture, to understand what you're looking at, and then to extract information and to validate it. So by training the brain in that way, we actually it's teaching our brain to critically think. And that's how we actually look at each particular scenario, the situation with regards to biological threat security or the economic meltdowns or any other particular issue. We're looking for the crime related to the threat, and we have to think in an investigative way in order to actually understand what we're looking at, in order to gather that information and then obviously prioritize it.
The situational awareness is the requirement not only of top management but also the line worker. For security field, it is security guards, supervisors at different locations. So they need to know what is happening around them as much as top leadership requiring to know what is happening in entire organization, enterprise level. I started my career with the coaxial cable based CCTV network, which later was based on Cat 6. We were having VHS cassettes. Then we started storing CCTV footage differently. I end up my career where security information bandwidth requirement was much bigger than the business requirement of my company. So that is the challenge, that so much of information is being transmitted upward and downward, and it is available in real time. But still, for accurate situational awareness, we need to have right type of information. Today, I know that in India there is one entrepreneur who started a concept of CCTV audit, which says that you can see and view only those things which are required. Today, when we have CCTV of 500 cameras, it is humanly impossible. So there are a lot of analytics written, video analytics and audio analytics. So back to situational awareness, what is required to be known when there are varieties of alarms, varieties of input needed for decision making, and still at one time you are there to make qualitative decision, and then you must have right information really available in real time. So how is it possible? For situational awareness, we have some software, some tools, and what you suggest?
Um, as I said, situational awareness is the key, and the criminals are using either technology or manpower. That's what they're trying to overcome and beat. Now, with regards to the instruments are only as good as the user. Now, we're using the manpower on the ground as well as the technology, and this is where we merge inside the book. One of the chapters is on merging technology with the manpower. In other words, what we do in order to understand the big picture, we triangulate various types of technologies, be it video technology and with analytics, access control, perimeter security, Internet of Things. We're using voice, we're using various technologies, as well as human intelligence. So we're merging human intelligence along with electronic intelligence, along with communications intelligence, along with signals intelligence. We're using all those resources to actually understand the big picture. So once we understand the big picture, the secret is then in the reporting, the actual threat identification, and then the reporting. And the analytics, we have got various types of analytics, such as anti-tailgating and the facial recognition and all different technologies. But from this, we can identify a threat very quickly in order to actually understand it. But the thing is that we have to reduce the false alarms, because we actually have to profit protect ourselves, the companies, as well as the client, the actual customers on the ground. So the reaction speed is very important. So the whole system with regards to utilizing the right devices, be it sensors or analytics, CCTV or whatever, whichever ones to use. But now we look at it differently. You see, the technical people, they just think that we need something, and they actually make it. In other words, when it came down to COVID, they made mask identification and social distancing. But we did more because we're the ones in the ground that actually do the job. We take all the temperature. We manage all the flow of the people and the behavior of people and ensure that they're sanitized. So we actually know exactly what type of technology is required. And the same thing goes for other particular issues. You know, the security industry have been involved in the electronics and technology side for many years. After 9/11, at 9/11, it was all the exhibitions grew huge in size with different technologies. At the same time, we moved from analog to IP. So that whole era at that time with biometrics running on and all different technologies, we were actually working with this technology all the time. But what we need to do is actually understand the crime. And the security managers on the ground want to do certain things. We need to do certain things because in India, you've got a very high escalation of kidnapping and of abductions. In South Africa, they've got one rape every 5 minutes, one murder every 24 minutes. And every single country in the world has got this crime. So we know what we need to do. How do we actually litigate this crime? How can we contribute to bring down these rates? And every security manager that's of a building where people are living or housing, we can do these things with using certain technologies. We can use tailgating to stop kidnapping as well as rape, many home invasions. We can use many things with it. And depending on how you apply it, if it's for safe containment of a person in a mental institution, you obviously want to have the tailgating not for only entering, but also exit because they're trying to escape. We use it differently for witness protection. We use it differently to stop kidnapping of children and trafficking of children or kidnapping of children from schools. We utilize technology specifically and purposely. So when you're having a look at all these system integrators and you're having a look at all the different manufacturers, you're just looking at, they're selling cameras, they're selling alarm laser, they're just talking about their boxes. We're looking at to solve the crime. So we need either a sensor and we need certain recognition, be it facial recognition, and we would need a tailgating, and we would need something else and something else because we're there to stop that crime. We deal with life impacting and deadly issues. We have to actually understand exactly what we're looking at. So if you're looking with situational awareness, you have to look through the eyes to understand the crime related to the site or any particular issue, be it a city or country or whatever it is, in line with, it's either your location or your field of interest. And then to actually understand what technology do we use to get situational awareness. Then we come in from the investigator's point of view, and we purposely put technology in certain places to do certain things to build a case, to follow the insider threat. Are they working in concert with somebody else? Are they working voluntarily or are they working under duress? That's a situation that we need to find. We have a specific mission. So situational awareness is holistic, and then we go into channeling it towards field of interest to utilize in order to really get the most out of it.
Good that now we know the ingredients of situational awareness. And my take is that for situational awareness, technological input are very good. There are so many analytics programs, software. The technologies are ever emerging, but over dependence on technology is good or bad would be known only through the outcome of decision taken based on situational awareness. People say that if it is so good, it must be bad. People say that if you if you think that technology is going to solve all your problems, then probably either you don't know the problems or you don't know the technologies. So over dependence of on technology, how much can we depend on technology? That is the big question, and this question will remain very stark for every security professional. How much I can depend on technology, where the interface and how much should be the interface with the human intervention and based on technological input. So how
I
you
think
try to
that
balance it out?
I think we're at a moment in time, and inside the X Factor, I talk to the current threats. This is new research philosophies and methodologies. And I address that we've got two economic meltdowns going on. One came from COVID, the second came from the Ukraine-Russian war. And what's happened is that the customers, the affordability, are actually saying, well, we can't have any more 4 guards or 4 security officers. We only can afford 3, or we only can afford 2. Well, and then you'd actually have technology people saying, well, use just technology and we can actually cut the price. And it's going to be cheaper. But there's so many different issues that can take place because you actually need a camera to look after the guard force. In other words, it's not just protect, the cameras are there not to only protect the site, but to protect the actual the guard force on the ground. And why this is very important is the last chapter that's inside the book that I've actually talked to, and it's called Catastrophe Security. You know, we're now in a place where the security industry is going to be going through a turmoil. The price to live is really, there's so many people going to become unemployed, desperate. You know, we don't even know what, we'll call the Amiga status shortly because America's just gone into a technical recession, or it's acknowledged. But the entire world is becoming insecure with many desperate people that will break their moral code to do desperate things. Now, when their businesses start closing and start shutting down, you know, they're going to try, you know, the accountants are going to think that we have to get rid of the expenses. Meanwhile, we have to profit protect the site and profit protect our clients. And we do that with technology. And we actually can cut the costs related to security by using technology in the right way and because the amount of time and sending too many people at once or if there's a mob gathering and you haven't got enough people to actually enforce security of a specific site, this can all cost either reputational damage or can cost so much different expenses. So that it's got to be put it over to the accountants in a way that they can actually understand security because they think we're an expense. The discussion that we have is actually written in the research of how to actually talk to the actual accountants so that they understand that the budget is vital for security and they actually need to invest more in the security in order to protect their profits, in order to keep their doors open, in order to stay in business. So when they understand that, they have a different opinion of what we actually need. Then the companies must understand that a self-monitoring company or just a control station that's not providing guards or if they're just providing technology, they can't try and think that they'll just cut the expense by 30% because they of officers and make so much money. It's not the case. You need the manpower on the ground because there has to be countermeasures taken. You need to have response. It doesn't just mean just sounding an alarm. It doesn't mean much. In other words, it all works together, but it's the people on the ground that find the crime, that find corruption, that find crime, real crime, that you can't see it on the actual, you know, just on the CCTV or the alarm monitoring. That's intrusion detection. That's, you know, that's different to what we're talking to. Security is not just perimeter security, not letting people getting into the site. That's not the only thing in security. There's much more to security. So I think the secret is actually being educated, and to educate ourselves, and to be relevant for today. For today, we've got to be relevant. We actually got to know what we're doing and how we're doing it.
Juan, you have mentioned in your book about e-learning.
This is a vital tool, yeah.
You advocate that for self-development, using e-learning is vital to security professionals. So what to learn, how to learn, where to learn, these are the questions. You are into updating and enhancing the knowledge and skill of security professionals. That probably is the most passionate thing you are involved with. And I am also similarly committed for professional upgradation of knowledge and skill. And our motto in ICISS is let's professionalize the professionals. So that is the motto we have. How you recommend e-learning to security professionals?
I believe it's not just e-learning, it's actually being in contact with other professionals. I think we have to use all the devices at our disposal for specific purpose and specific reason. The first thing is that when people go to a lecture or a seminar, within 16 days, if they remember 2% of what they actually heard is something. But if we look at surgeons that are holding the lives of others in their hands, they do certain things on purpose, purposely. So in other words, they would take an apple with a scalpel and peel an apple every morning to keep their fingers nimble, because those are the tools. And we have to actually keep our brain in theater. In other words, we have to keep it, when we walk into shift, it's like walking like a surgeon into the hospital, into a theater. We have to be very much Zen-like. So when we understand, the security industry is very advanced, because what we're doing is that we're taking certain bits of information and we're actually making it the easiest, the most effective way. And the way that we do it is by using lie, deception, detection, and critical situational interviewing. In other words, for a few minutes every day, you have to train your brain to actually find somebody lying or hiding information. That's your mission. And that's every security practitioner's mission, is to find the X factor, to actually look and see is there a silent victim? Is somebody being bullied, blackmailed? Is somebody trying to harm somebody else? So what we're doing is that we're using these devices for a few minutes every day to actually remind us and reinforce what we're looking at. We need to look at things and understand what we're looking at. And that's why the X Factor manuscript is actually not just a whole book, a manuscript. It actually comes with specific skills, because we have to live it. We actually have to live the job. We have to apply the tools on the ground automatically, because we have to embed that knowledge, because we have to react instinctively. When you're facing life and death situations or deadly outcomes, you don't have time. You have to react instinctively. So to foster human intelligence, it's your responsibility, like a surgeon is responsible, to educate themselves. We have to do it as part of the job. If you can't tell somebody's lying or not, you do the risk. This is the job that we do. We have to find the criminals. We have to find the perpetrators. We've got to find out if people are being abused. We have to be aware of these things. So what we do is that we use certain tools, and one of them is an e-learning tool or a platform, whatever you want to call it, to self-educate ourselves all the time, to bring us into theater, to bring our brain into the job. So we're using this. So it keeps our mentality in the job, and we're getting knowledge, because if you don't know what you're looking at, you're not going to see it. So if you tapped in and you're having and you have short video clips with other professionals, you're now looking for certain things that were talked about, and then you actually relay it. So it's bringing it live. In other words, we're not just working with reference books anymore and big thick books. We have to take all this knowledge and apply it today. And the reason being is that the practitioners, we have so much responsibility. There's so many new technologies. There's so many criminals. To think and to remember all of this in one lifetime, really, this is a journey. And this is the journey that we're there to do. We're there to understand the threats, come up with the right solutions, and understand what we're looking at and what we have to do. We have to work with protocols. We have to work with standardization, globalization. We have to work with all these different tools in order to actually be relevant for today. And that's where e-learning, or let's call it e-connecting, as opposed to e-learning, e-connecting is actually bringing that information into the palm of our hands so that we can actually send messages. Like we can send a message to all the security officers, which we did, was to remove black fungus, to remove the black fungus, and then to find the crime related to oxygen theft, because it caused a person, they lost one eye, or they lose two eyes, or they lost their top jaw. This disease was running parallel to COVID. So we had to send out messages to all practitioners. We had to give them that education so that they actually could reduce that type of deadly outcome or life impact outcome. And this happened. This was running at the same time. In India, there was 7,000. We identified it. Within a few weeks, it went up to 42,000. So this is life impacting deadly outcomes. It's the same thing with monkeypox now, where we're sending out messages. As we're getting in the information, we're educating everybody. So if you're plugged in and you're e-learning with the right focal points, you're getting this data. We need this data. We cannot afford to be without this data. It's vital.
Security chief of multinational company has raised a question, and his question is about profiling. He says in few countries he has seen as a practice that security team is engaged in profiling of their customers, their visitors, and employees. He wants to know that is it really beneficial, and also whether it is ethical.
Profiling, I don't understand the word profiling. What I understand is that if you're talking to somebody and you see somebody that's has fear, and you can see that they're being bullied by somebody, then you obviously want to investigate that. So in other words, what's happening is that you're attracted to that potential threat. This is what we do. We're there to assist and to save lives. That's what we're there to do. And so if, in other words, when we know what we're looking at and we know what we're looking for, we're there to find the crime and stop it. It's not the weapon or the bomb that's the problem, it's people. And so we have to, that's exactly what we do. We're there to stop the crime and to save lives. So if we can see somebody stalking somebody that's somebody that's a sexual predator that's starting to stalk and act suspiciously, what are we doing? Are we profiling them, or what are we doing? We're actually understanding what we're looking at. There's a threat in theater. So I don't know, this is my personal opinion. I'm not talking on behalf of any country or law about, whatever law, but this is the way that I interpret it. I hope it answers the question.
In fact, for our viewers, I want to share that though profiling was very established practice in aviation security, it has now come to hospitals and hospitality. Like hotels and hospitals also now more and more encourage security team to do profiling, because in hotel as much as in hospital, not very intrusive security is advised. So the training to conventional security professionals to hone up their skills and perfect the observation perfect their picking up the indicators, personal behavior, psychology. These are those soft skills being developed in security profession. In fact, I ran a very successful training, program for profiling the visitors in hospitality sector. But I am very pleased to share with our viewers that, John, you have done what the security professionals needed all this while to sharpen their knowledge and skills. And the best part is that approach to this subject is very easy and practical. The book is highly recommended for security professionals all over the world because it has a universal application global approach. And how you get to know about this book, how to get benefited of his experience, knowledge, and wisdom, our viewers must be very keen to know. So, Juan, can you share how our viewers benefit from this book which you have authored?
Well, I'd like to answer your question because while you were talking, you actually, now inside the research and the question with regards to profiling, I was talking just on basic, day-to-day things. But when you're talking about profiling and you're talking about border security and migration, unfortunately, and I do talk to this in the book, that we have got migrants coming from certain areas where they were maybe kidnapped as children, trained to kill, more than likely have killed and raped. And when you have a look at the crime stats of where they've arrived, you will see the highest domestic violent crime rates and associated to that group of migrants that are moving through. It's very, these are, one can utilize this information for good purpose, because if there are orphans coming in from those countries and which you want to take in and assist, then those children need to go through an absorption process in order to sensitize and to actually have a very easy, how can I say, absorption into a new culture or a different type of culture. So the purpose, in other words, purposely, we have to consider so many different aspects. I answered very quickly on that question, was just on a normal security company in a certain country, on profiling and assessing people and the threat. But I wanted to just elaborate on that after, because you've expanded my thinking pattern and my thought pattern in order to offer, or let's call it volunteer, that bit of information that I did. I'm sorry, I had to put that in. With regards to the actual knowledge, Capt is, which is in India, and SASA in South Africa, and ISA as an international organization, all of us endorse the HRM tool. And the HRM tool is a tool, it's the easiest and most effective method that contains all this information and more. But what's important is that we feed continuous information on as the threats come. We understand the threats, we actually elaborate. Much of the information we actually give away for free, such as the biological threat security with regards to COVID, and now with regards to monkeypox. So we actually go into the layering of manpower by skill sets. We pay attention to the technology that has to be used, because we also take into consideration that there are unethical, or let's call it people that exaggerate what the technology can do, and we obviously point them through to specific sites where they can validate the performance of that technology. So all this information and the protocols, and it's a living document. As I said, this is a research that's over 9 years. It's progressively been realized, and so it's very relevant for today, right here and now. And now we're going into where we're going now, where all the sites that are predicted in the research that we're going to get hit in certain countries, anarchy, increased deaths, violence, all these, this is this is relevant information for to be relevant today to do the job. We have to be tapped in to get this information, and so you can get it if you go through to Capt or you go through to ISIO. You can actually link through to HIM, Human Investigation Management, and you'll actually see the actual tools there. And there is the free information that we provide. But what's important is that we actually, I think it's an information hub that must be tapped in with all the security organizations and other bodies, because we're the ones that are doing the groundwork for CBRN. This, we're going through a second pandemic, with regards to monkeypox. You mustn't think that's the end of the day. If any practitioners are not fully aware of biological threat security, they aren't risk managers. You have to apply. You have to get the knowledge that's relevant, and these are all relevant topics for here and now. It's not because we just come up with something nice. This is vital. We deal with life impact. It's our obligation to do this work. There's no thinking about this. So that's how we get through to HIM. Thank you for asking, Professor.
Juan, thank you very much. You have been very helpful and very elaborate in explaining various terms you use in your book. I found it very simple to read and easy to understand with the global approach. For your information and for the information of our viewers, this discussion was part of our security leadership discussion. And we keep bringing such a stalwarts like Juan Christian here. And I request you, Juan, to be available for discussion on another very important subject on mutually convenient time and date. We will have another discussion with you. And we would like to know from you how young security professionals can be made better professionals. Today's discussion and discussions now onwards would be easy to view on our channel. If you subscribe to the channel, you will get the notification also of forthcoming discussions. Remember, we have only one motto, only one objective, and that is professionalizing the security professionals. Till we bring next discussion on another very important subject, remain tuned in, subscribe to our channel, and I wish you a very safe and happy and healthy days. Thank you very much for joining us.